Hi, ChickenboneJohn here. After a long absence, just been back from Glastonbury, I say just, probably about a week. I'm here to talk about guitar strings for cigar box guitar. I've been using my own sort of gauge sets for ages, which are, if I can get these on camera, okie doke, that's these, which are my original set of nickels. Original set, where we go, a bronze wound, and the original hollow belly set. These are generally the same gauge. They're 042, 032, 024 for a GDG tuning, although the hollow belly set can be used in an AEA tuning, which is what he uses, so they're slightly lighter. They'll go up higher. These have been great, but I've also been looking at doing some other tunings and some other gauges. So moving on from that, we've got two new ones in the GDG range, and these are what we call a balanced tension set, and they're in medium and light. So the gauges have been altered slightly. On the original ones, which we now call tight top, loose low, the low string, the 42, gives you a lot of twang, and the top, which is a 24 on these, is quite resistant and gives you quite stiff to resist some heavy duty slide use. Now if you want some that are slightly easier on your fingers, and I say more balanced from low to high, the new balanced tension sets are the one to go for. The light obviously gives you less tension, they're easier to play on your fingers. The medium is more like our original set with a slightly heavier bottom string. We're actually up to a 46. That sounds very heavy, but when you're tuning that in G, it's not a problem. And the top is a little lighter, so that's easier to fret. Gives you a little less resistance under the slide. So we've got, for that G tuning and A tunings, we've got a whole load of strings there to choose from. Going up from that, we've got this, which we call our old time gauge, and that's for a CGC tuning. So the strings are all lighter, and you can tune a lot higher to a C or even a D. And they're 3222 with a 15 plain on top. All the other sets, the G tunings, are wound strings. And then we've got lighter again, which we call the high lonesome, which is an E tuning, and that's very similar to the top three of a regular guitar. So we've got 26, 16, 12. That'll tune from D to an E. Okie doke. And we've not forgotten about people who play 4-string, and we've got two different ones. One which is the high, which is comparable to the top 4 of a regular guitar. So the tuning on that would typically be G, D, B, D. It's one of the original tunings I started playing 4-string in. It's great for that Robert Johnson, Keith Richards, Rolling Stones sort of sound. And then we've got the low tuning, which is like your GDG of a 3-string with a B, the 3rd in the scale, on the top. That's what Hollow Belly uses on his 4-string aluminium resonator guitars, which I make for him. Okay, so we've got a pretty comprehensive range, and then not forgetting anybody who wants 6 strings, we do the Dario XL. These are the classic electric set, and they are 10 gauge, and you've got the Dario classic 8020 bronze for acoustic 6-string, and they are, if I'm looking at that, they're a 12 gauge on top, running from 12 to 53. So that's pretty comprehensive, I think. We've gone, as I say, from our original set of 3 variations, the bronze, the hollow belly, and our original. We've actually rebranded this. It's still the same string, but we now call it tight top, low, loose low, to reflect the fact that those gauges give you that variation of tension across the strings. I still like that, that twangy bottom end and the tight top, which is great for resisting the slide. If you used to playing with very light strings, you probably find it's easy to bottom the strings out on the frets, which you don't want. And by the way, all of these strings are USA made D'Addario. We select the gauges and package them so they're bang on for 3-string cigar box guitar. Just a point about, if you're used to buying sets and splitting them, 6-string sets and splitting them, the gauges you get, they're sort of okay. You might find that typically the 5, the 4 and the 3 from a regular set will work, but you're either tuning some too low or too high to what they're designed to be. All strings, when manufacturers gauge them, they calculate the tensions, and there's an optimum range in which they're going to work. So they're going to sound right and they're going to last and not break. So if you're used to buying 6 strings and splitting them, this might be a revelation that you actually get the right tension. They're easier to play and they're going to sound better. And also, as you probably know if you look at my site, I'm not really into cheap stuff. There's some things which I will not economize on. Strings, the difference between a cheap set of strings and an expensive set of strings is perhaps, £2 or £3. It's not worth, in my opinion, not worth saving the money. Get the right thing for the job. You can get away with all sorts of things when you're making a cigar box guitar, different wood, different boxes, different finishers, different things to use for the frets. Cheap machine has cheap pickups. They'll sort of work. But I always think that a good set of strings is not really worth, saving a few pounds to cheat yourself to get the best out of your guitar. This is what makes the sound. The strings. It starts with the strings. If strings aren't any good, I've had Chinese strings, and when you uncoil them, you can see they've still got the coil, the curve on them. They don't straighten out. It's because it's a low carbon steel. It's very weak. They're very likely to break. And some of them, I've just, especially plain ones, have had such little electrical response. The output's so weak. And then you put on a proper set of strings and you really will notice the difference. So there you go. That's based on our experience of, I've made nearly 1,000 guitars in my own workshop, probably made a couple of thousand in the make and play. We sold hundreds of kits. So we get through thousands of sets of strings a year. So we do know what we're doing. And we're not buying in the cheapest Chinese rubbish that we can. I don't like doing that. Sometimes there's an appropriate place to buy cheap Chinese stuff, but with strings, I think buy the best you can afford, and at a £5 a set, it's not too much to shell out to get your guitar sounding absolutely tip top. Okay, bye for now.